Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Joining us today is Sheriff Rosie Cordero-Stutz, otherwise known as Sheriff Rosie from the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office. And we are thrilled to have you on our podcast today, Sheriff. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
So you and I met a while back through a gentleman named Doug Muldoon, and I think everybody in Florida knows Doug Muldoon. Wouldn't you agree?
Agreed.
So Doug was the Palm Bay police chief for years, retired, has been prolifically active in the FBI NA circles and then the Florida FBI, and that's how we met. And I was thrilled to learn that you're running for sheriff. We have some friends in the same circles with your undersheriff, Chris Carruthers, and I went to the National Academy together. One of your majors, George Pereira, and I do a lot with cyber crimes and AI. And then there's some people from years past that, like Ed Caneva from years ago when I was in the SWAT world, people like that from down there that just think the world of you. So I'm glad that you're on our episode today.
Thank you so much. And you just literally went through like a plethora of my career, people who I've touched and worked with in different ways.
Yeah, you've had an exciting career. So from what I know, and our listeners don't know, so I'll ask you to touch on that. So where were you born?
So I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I came to the country when I was about 2 months old. Obviously, my parents brought me. They were already living in the States by then, but my mom had a complicated pregnancy with me, right? So she went home to her mom to help her get through that tough time. And so I was born there and obviously have lived my entire life here in the United States. I did have the opportunity to visit the Dominican Republic often as a child during the summers and spend time with my grandmother. And so I have a lot of love for the Dominican Republic, and I feel very connected to the culture and the community, but definitely American first.
Right. And then you were raised in New York. So like a lot of folks in Florida today, you were raised in New York and you migrated down to Florida.
Yeah. So after college, it was a difficult economic time in the country and it was hard to get a job. My parents have been divorced for years and my dad was already living in South Florida. So South Florida was already the second home to me. I'd spent after high school pretty much every spring break that I could and every vacation, summertime down here in South Florida. I learned to drive on Ocean Drive. And so with that said, it was just a very natural evolution for me to move south. I graduated and I said, okay, I'm going to my other home.
Okay. And you started, I think you were like me from what I remember. So when I started law enforcement, it was back in 1992, and I only applied at one place. It was the only place I ever wanted to work. It was my hometown. It was the Tallahassee Police Department. And back then for me, I even had a relative that worked for the police department that was in command staff. And I had relatives that worked for the city and the fire department and other places. And even then, it didn't matter. If you knew somebody, you had to wait. You were
Yes,
going to wait, and it's completely opposite today. But did you experience something like that?
I did. I did. So I also just applied to one department, the back then Metro-Dade Police Department, 1996 for me. And I don't know, in hindsight, that was probably not the smartest decision, but it worked out for me. I would not recommend it these days, but I loved the department. I knew it offered growth opportunities, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a profession. And so with that said, I applied and it took me 2 years to get on the job. And so, yeah, it was a very complex process. And, I think today we're so used to that instant gratification, right? Send an email, get the response back. Back then it was literally snail mail. And between New York and Florida, the snail mail really took its time.
Yeah, let alone like a true background investigation. If they sent a detective up to interview anybody from your past, that would even add more time.
Absolutely.
So you get on with Miami Dade, and again, you don't know this, but I know this just because I was listening to the FSA cast. Is we had similar backgrounds. You started on patrol, and then you went into it sounded like general investigations, property crimes, robbery, homicide, IAPIO, public information.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I had a very similar career path, and the PIO part was wonderful. I cannot imagine what it would be like in Miami Dade, where so many things, so many international things happen. Were there some highlights of that part of your career?
Well, it's funny you should say that because that was always the joke at the PIO office that as soon as we got a new PIO, you were going to expose to some international event that would cause you to go right to international news. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the bigger events. Oh, I remember. We had with those protesters that came down and we prepared for months in advance I'm trying to think of the name. It was an economic
Yeah. 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 Okay.
FCC, maybe. Okay, well, I'll think of it and I'll get the sentence out correctly. But basically, we prepared for months in advance, trained all of our officers to make sure that it would be a peaceful time here in South Florida while they were here for this economic convention. And sure enough, there was a little bit of nothing major, but enough of an uprising that we had every camera, international camera you can imagine, wanting to know, what we were up to. And so I had that exposure. Big things in my career as a PIO. I dealt a lot, believe it or not, with Hollywood.
Oh,
So
with the movies in Miami. Yeah.
yeah, the
Sure.
movies. So the movies, because we've had quite a few movies based out of South Florida that really embraced our department, back then department. So like Bad Boys 1 and 2, yeah, Pain and Gain, Dexter, let's see. Miami Vice, of course. How can I forget Miami Vice? Yeah. So these are all big productions that were being done right here in South Florida that we were fully and, immersed in the process.
Right. And then and on top of that, you had huge events. And I know later on, when you'd been promoted further up into command, I know Surfside had happened on your watch or in your district, in your purview, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Surfside occurred within the municipality, the city of Surfside, right? Surfside is a small city. They do have their own police department. It's a small department. And but that is within the north end of the county, which at the time I was the police chief of all the northern part of the county. So I had under my purview at the time, I guess about 5 different districts, which is the unincorporated areas that we police primarily. And then obviously the supporting factor of every municipality within that area, right? So just for reference point for people who are listening, Miami-Dade County has the umbrella. Within it, we have 37 municipalities. And we have 3 of those municipalities that we are the primary law enforcement agency. We provide contracted services. So really 34 are the ones that have their own separate, police chiefs and local governments. But with that said, obviously Surfside occurs and it is, a huge event and we immediately step in. So, I think it was probably 19 days before I got my first breath off that scene. It was, and, I don't know, 18, 20-hour days. I can't even tell you. Honestly, sometimes it feels like one long day.
Right. So you bring up a couple of interesting points. So for our listeners, and you and I know about this, but back in 2017, 2018, the Florida Constitutional Revision Committee met and they proposed that all sheriffs in Florida become constitutional sheriffs. So as a sidebar, there were several sheriff's offices, including Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which is a consolidated agency and has been, I think, since '68. There's the agency that I worked at, Volusia Sheriff's Office, that was a charter sheriff, and our sheriff, Sheriff Chitwood, was an elected sheriff, but basically ran a public or a county police department, and all the employees belonged to the county. The sheriff was elected, but everything else was pretty much owned and operated by the county and Miami-Dade. So Amendment 10 was this huge push, and it won. There was all sorts of protesting from different political entities, especially in your county and my county, but we won, and that was under FSA President Michael Atkinson when that fight started. And so we went through the Amendment 10 process first, and it was fun, and it was also extremely stressful because for us, all truth be told, the county was kind of gave us the thumb and said, "Good luck figuring this out." So we had to reach out to FSA, and they bent over backwards, and they brought in all sorts of retired sheriffs and current sheriffs and folks that help us navigate and create a standalone constitutional sheriff's office that protected the office of the sheriff and allowed the elected sheriff to make the best decisions for his or her community. So for you guys and for our listeners, the last stat I looked is Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office, I believe, is the number 3 or number 4 largest sheriff's office in America, behind LA and I think Chicago, and there might be one more. So you have what, 3,800 sworn roughly?
Roughly 3,200 sworn. And then with my civilian support, we're just under 5,000.
Okay, so roughly 5,000 employees that have grown up in this other culture of how things were. So would you describe to our listeners what it was like before Amendment 10, like the agency that you were brought up in? What did it look like?
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, thank you for that breakdown on the difficulties between 2018 to 2024 for me. So Volusia County had an earlier date that you had a transition. And so in a way, all of your pains were my gains, right? Because we were able to tap into, and you're right, we also had a lack of support when it came to the transition. It's really, I'm blessed that being part of the command staff at the time, stepping up to saying, look, whether they help us or not, we need to prepare, right? We need to have this transition. And so I actually spearheaded the internal transition committee several years before ever making a decision I was going to run for sheriff. So it's about a year and a half. Yeah. And I'll tell you that was extremely beneficial to me later on as I was, going through the process of running for sheriff, because I understood the enormous job we had in front of us in this transition. It's one thing to talk about the culture, right? So the truth is that no one in Miami-Dade County knows what the culture of a sheriff's office is. You don't know what you don't know. We've never had it, at least not since 1966. And most of the people around at that time are not in a position to be able to share that culture or their experiences. Additionally, our sheriff was arrested in 1966 for corruption and fraud. And so, yeah, definitely not the atmosphere we want to revitalize. So for me, it is like standing up a brand new office, one that stands alone on professionalism, integrity, and service. It's such an important thing for me. And I'm so grateful to Florida Sheriff's Association for allowing themselves to be a support to me, even when they, really, who was I? I didn't know them. They didn't know me as an individual, but they really did embrace me and afford me the opportunity to ask the questions that I needed and offer me the resources, whether it's other sheriffs, retired sheriffs, even just answering a question that I didn't understand the concept of. And they've been there, honestly, from day one. So I'm very grateful to that. But I want to talk a little bit, go back to your original question about the change that I've seen in my professional career.
1 second, Sheriff. So in my mind, if you or if any of our listeners have been to the Grand Canyon, if you stand out and you look over and you can see the strata in the geology, you can see these major where there's this huge shift. and it's there forever. And you guys are standing on this huge strata shift. And so, yes, I can't wait to hear your answer. So go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I hope I have a safety harness on the edge of that cliff. That's all I can say.
Well, that's what your undersheriff is for. He's supposed to pull you back.
Excellent. I'll let him know you said so too, John. Okay, so when I start on the job, we have a system where we have an appointed police director. That was a title. And that person was always appointed by the county manager. That's what we had. We had a county manager system. We in our commission, we have 13 commissioners. Another point of reference for everyone. If you know what your county looks like, ours is 13. So yeah, it's huge. So the county manager, the administrator, basically, right, was they appointed a professional law enforcement person to run the law enforcement agency at the time, Metro-Dade. And that system is in place for years, and it's working just fine. But somewhere along the way, local government changes for us, and we go to a county mayor, right? Not a strong mayor, just a mayor, right? And we're so blessed that the very first county mayor is a retired police director. So we are able to kind of continue in the same fashion we had before under the county manager. Nothing changed really for much for us. We continued in a system where the local mayor appointed a police director and allowed the police director to run law enforcement. Then again, years pass, county government changes, and we now go to a strong mayor. Now that's when I think really the dynamics here locally starts to change. As a strong mayor, number one, the position is run much more politically than administratively. And with that said, now that position has the power and authority to be able to control law enforcement. So the shift starts to go from the professional law enforcement police director running the everyday operations of law enforcement and shifting it to a more bureaucratic way of running law enforcement. I think our organization did a fantastic job for many, many years, really working out how to navigate that system, right? But when I look at it now as a professional with 29 years of experience, I know in my heart of hearts, there was no better time for Miami-Dade County to go to a sheriff's office than when it did. Because we all know that nothing really can hurt a community more when it comes to public safety than when agendas are running instead of what is in the best interest of the community. And that's what I saw. That's what I saw.
That was like the mission creep that you saw come in, right? From what was established in the 60s through your career, you started to see that this was shifting over and it was becoming, on the outside looking in, it looked like it was becoming more of a political led.
Absolutely. So think of it. Political, and political can sometimes have such a negative word, right? Or I should say negative tone to the word. I mean it in regards to where you're making decisions based on pushing forward your agendas, right? But in public safety, you cannot do that. You cannot allow that to lead how you're running your agency. And so for me, I think that as a professional looking out at my organization, I recognize that it is a dynamic that had changed, not just locally, it was an evolution of our county government. And so when we were now not just standing up our office of the sheriff, but a total of 5 constitutional offices peeled away from Miami-Dade County at the same time. It was the perfect time. It is returning a checks and balances to our local government that was very much needed.
And that's see, that could be a whole nother podcast too, and we don't have time today, but is how does the sheriff, the elected sheriff, what are the relationships now with the other constitutionals? Because it is a complete, the paradigm completely shifted overnight. So,
Yeah.
and in the past, it was all under one person. One person controlled all of that, the money, the allocations,
Yes.
all those things. And now it's back bifurcated, like you said, with checks and balances.
Mhm.
And that's like
You're
I said,
right.
that's a whole other podcast. It's fascinating.
It is. And I would honestly tell you, John, that we're still very much trying to kind of walk the tightrope on that one right now. We're all trying to find our ground and our footing and figure out the best way, each of our constitutionals. I mean, and for me, obviously, the budget is a huge part of being able to provide services to my community as well as to support my deputies, right, and employees. So that was really one of my very first kind of fights, for lack of a better word, that I had to really embrace head on. So when I take office, I get sworn in January 7th, but we're already 1/4 of the way into a fiscal year, right? So the county, when the transition occurred, they, of course, moved things around in the budget. And ultimately, they cut a lot of the funds that were allocated to the then police department. Air quotes is what I'm using now. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the motivations were, right? The truth is I don't care what the motivations were. I needed to provide the basic services county is accustomed to and deserves. I wasn't even a matter at that point of talking about what I was going to do better. I couldn't even provide the service that we had just one simple year before. And so that was a very big, complicated process that I had to address immediately. I was successful. I got an amendment to the current year's budget to allow me to make it to the next fiscal year. And I have now since then submitted my next year's, right? Everyone knows, right? May 1st, all of us sheriffs put in our budget requests for the next fiscal year. I want everyone to understand that every time I do this, no one in this county gets it. They're like, what are you asking for? We don't understand. Because historically, this is the way it worked, right? The county gave us a budget. Well, let me go back. We would put in a request for a budget. They would turn around and give us whatever they wanted, right? And then halfway through the year, they take away whatever savings you might have garnered or put away for a rainy day because they're balancing an entire budget with 38, 39 different departments. And there's no reason if you have money in one department not to take it and use it in another department. That's part of their everyday practice. But now that no longer happens, not just with the sheriff, but with the other constitutionals as well. And so for me, I had to fight for that immediately in order to provide the basic, things that this community deserves. But now I need to take it to the next level, which is this is the budget of my needs for next fiscal year. And so, but now they want to like push and pull regarding my budget. And so I have to be very firm and strong in saying, these are the reasons why. And I'm happy to do so because I feel very strong where I stand and where I'm coming from because I'm not asking for anything unreasonable at all. But I think what needs to happen is everyone in this count, and I think also not just local government, but the residents themselves will recognize that, oh, we need to fund law enforcement, public safety, and then we can talk about the other stuff. Because the truth is that you can't worry about, I don't know, changing traffic lights or doing the other upkeep. Not that they're not important; they're very important when it comes to county government and the services we provide. But we cannot do that on the back of public safety. And that's part of what had happened over the years when they were able to really have a very strong hand in the funding of the police department.
Yeah, that's that massive mission creep that happens, especially when there's a city manager or a county manager. Because you're right, they have the entire government system, and they would pull money from this fund and that fund, and to them it doesn't matter if it's police, fire, or sanitation. They need it in a certain other pocket of the budget, and that's one of the beautiful things about the office of the sheriff is you as the elected sheriff, who your number one priority is to protect and serve, right? And what drives the sheriff's office, at the base level, it calls for service. And calls for service and the patrol deputies often get overlooked, but that is the reason we exist. I mean, that is the mission of law enforcement, is protecting and serving and making sure the men and women that are out there and marked cars have what they need to keep our community safe. And I think that gets lost sometimes when people that really don't know much about public safety.
A hundred
So
percent, John. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
that's got to be a big battle for you.
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, I always tell people, I go, look, at the end of the day, without public safety, all these wonderful, great things that are going on in the county would not happen, right? Public safety, fire, police, that there's a certain area that you has to be the foundation of any government. In fact, doesn't government exist to protect the people? So yeah, it's we don't know what we don't know. The county, the residents are learning, and I am honored and humbled to have been chosen to be the person to really set this office up. And I'm really My mission, my personal mission, honestly, and running for sheriff has always been to create a foundation, a sheriff's office foundation that's just going to be able to stand for decades, centuries to come in the future, because we get one shot at doing this right. We get one shot. And it was so important to me that it was someone who understood that we have to take care of our deputies. We have to take care of our law enforcement to help keep this county safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what we talked about a minute ago, so as police officers, as deputy sheriffs, we kind of live and die by manuals and general orders and directives and SOPs, and we especially like go-bys or checklists or cheat sheets. And when you became, not just you, but your entire agency, and then the other constitutional officers became bona fide, by God, constitutional sheriffs, there was really no go-by. There was no cheat sheet. That's you. You had to take a menagerie, hodgepodge from how this sheriff did it, how that sheriff did it, and kind of roll it into how that fits in your community, right?
100%. And I'm going to add to that. I don't know if anyone who might be listening has visited Miami-Dade County. We are very different than the rest of the state. We have such an influence, international, footprint right here in this county. I mean, basically everything we do is done in like three languages. I mean, so you're absolutely right. It's such a different dynamic. Again, another reason why I felt so strongly that it had to be someone who not only was a professional law enforcement individual with that level of experience because of the large job in front of the sheriff, but it had to be someone who grew up in this county, who understood our very unique needs, who could really relate to our community and understand the shift that has occurred, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And again, so I try to use that every day as I build out this office of the sheriff. I cannot tell you that I had not seen a day off since January 7th until Mother's Day. My staff made me take Mother's Day. They were like, you will take this weekend. But I needed to do that. It was very important to me that I needed to be present and available so I can have those conversations. Because after the election, I think there was still a new level of people like, okay, so now we've elected a sheriff. What does that mean? How will this affect our community, our economic engine here locally, and what are the powers of the sheriff? And so I felt very strongly, and still do, that I need to be present to have those conversations with my commerce chambers of commerces, right? With coalitions, with any or leaders in our community and organizations that help to drive the foundation of a community, of how it functions. Because if they knew who I was and what I was capable of, then they can in turn share that outwardly. And that would help for me to spread the message as to what it was that I was trying to accomplish.
Right, and a good friend of yours and mine, Sheriff Atkinson, Michael Atkinson, up in the Panhandle in Walton County, he'll tell you that one of the first things that you need to do as a sheriff is establish the tone and tenor of what you and your office is going to stand for, why you are blessed to hold that position. And I think as an outsider, again looking in, that has to be a really hard lift for you and your folks. It has to be a really hard lift because of what you just said, the diversity there. So you have people of all colors, all religions, all languages. I mean, you have a huge sect of the Jewish population. You have a huge sect of Hispanic population, Creole, people from the islands, all these things. And you're the sheriff for all of them. You're Sheriff Rosie to all of them. So it has to be a Herculean effort from your end to balance all that and to establish that tone and tenor for the very people that put you in office.
No, John, you could have said it better. Venezuelans, Cubans, right now, where we have a national immigration push, right? Where they are affected, their livelihoods, their families. There's nothing more disruptive to any human being than to have this uncertainty about their home, their families, the safety of their children. We all know this, right? Because this is language that speaks to all of us, regardless of your race, color, and creed. And so in addition to just standing up, there's this whole additional level of a national narrative that is affecting on my community tremendously. And I say that because I believe that you always prepare for the worst, hope for the best, but ultimately something comes out of left field that you were never expecting, right? And that's basically what happened for, I think, and it's okay. We're resilient that way. I think especially police officers, we're very, and deputies, we're very resilient when it comes to handling things that come out of left field for us. I think that's part of our training, kind of like our DNA.
Absolutely. And it makes things fun to a certain extent. And then if you're not careful, it goes from being fun to being really stressful. But
Yeah, agreed.
so, what would you say? You've talked about the transition, and you've been in office now. It's more than 100 days, but I think you're almost coming up on 6 months, right? Was it the 27th of June? Would that be 6 months officially?
So, are we counting the day I was elected or the day I was sworn in?
Probably the day you were sworn in, because
Okay, yeah, because
when the
technically that's
boots
when I
hit the
was
ground
able
for
to.
sure.
Yeah, so that was 7th of January. So 6th of, yeah, so we're at 7/7 would be 6 months. So just under 6 months.
What challenges did you when you accepted and you 'cause I was at your swearing in ceremony, which was beautiful, by the way. I was in the crowd,
Thank
and it
you.
was it was a wonderful ceremony, and they did a really good job doing that. But what challenges have you faced that were even more challenging than you thought they would be? Is there something that you're like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for this, or
Yeah. Yeah, that one's an easy one and a hard one all at the same time, which is my impact at a state level. Like I had my entire focus when I was running for sheriff was Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade County, right? And then I get elected to sheriff, and it's like, oh, by the way, here, and I feel like this tug at a state level, right? Legislatively, learning that process. We have never been really a part of the legislative process because the county handled that. So if I had a push legislatively, I would turn it over to the county attorney's office, and I might make number 8 in a list of 300, right? Priorities. Now I get to have a full voice and a strong voice in Tallahassee when it comes to legislature. So that was unexpected and something I didn't see it coming. I thought, oh yeah, we'll just give them some ideas. No, no, no. You have to be up there. You have to talk to your representatives and senators. And so that was a big shock to me, I think. And also I'll say that the embrace that I felt, right? Because now I am Miami-Dade Sheriff standing in Tallahassee. And so now people were reaching out and having good conversations and letting me know about their support for the office of the sheriff. And I thought, wow, we didn't just have fans in Miami-Dade County, right? We didn't have just support in Miami-Dade County. We had it at the state. Now, Florida Sheriff's Association, I always knew was supporters, but it went above and beyond that. And that was a very nice surprise.
I could see that because your position casts a big shadow, and you have a huge sphere of influence. You're right, inside the county. And then I think I probably would have made the same assumption that you would have been. I would have been so focused on my county and not realize the footprint that you would have on South Florida than Florida as a whole. Because your part of the state has always been like bleeding edge when it comes to policing technology. I can't tell you how many times we studied a SWAT call out, or when you guys had some huge special event or protests or other things, and we would meet with somebody and go, how did you work that? How did you come up with that? So just from a policing standpoint, let alone a political standpoint, I mean, that would almost have to be overwhelming too for you to realize the sphere of influence that you have. So yeah, that's really thought provoking.
Yeah, it really was, like I said, eye-opening for me. And you're right. Like, so I was fully on ready the day I got sworn in. Like I knew that I had the World Cup Club games coming, coming out of last year's Copa America event, which was a not successful event at the Hard Rock, where we had, property damage and people rushing the gates and people were injured, and it was a very bad situation. And so obviously I needed to make sure that our community was going to feel comfortable, that we were going to be able to handle it, right? That now it's under my command. Now it's a sheriff. And so again, so that's a very clear mission, right? Public safety mission, and I knew I had to address that. But now I want you to recognize that that simple response is it's at an international platform, because FIFA, who is right the main engine of those games, and we're going into World Cup next year, is international, and we're going to have billions of people watching us this summer. and we're gonna do it well. We're gonna do it right, right? So yes, again, so that was all on the law enforcement. Let's not add all the other stuff that's going on. We've got Formula One. Formula One has been here now 4 years in South Florida, right? They originally signed a 10-year contract with us. Well, guess what? They just signed an additional 10 years with us. So now you're looking at 16 more years of Formula One. And this is not counting maybe any bids for Super Bowls, which we've had, our championship football games, Orange Bowls. So yeah, we are definitely, yeah, tennis. I can go on and on. When it comes to events, South Florida, it continues to grow. It's not even slowing down, John. So yeah, you're 100% correct.
We'll be right back. SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit saferwatchapp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Now back to the show. Yeah. I mean, so many people are still moving to Florida every day, you know. On a more like granular level, what's it been for the Miami-Dade police officers to transition to be Miami-Dade deputy sheriffs? What feedback have you gotten? Is there an excitement, or are you explaining the role to them now that they are also
Yeah. So
by de
yes,
facto they're an extension of you, so they also have a constitutional role as well?
yeah. So I'm so glad you asked me that question because I do think that there's energy and excitement, and they're happy and they embraced it. I'll share a story with you. Obviously, I got my 5-point star badge, right? Or early on, right? Because it comes down from the governor. And but we had shield type badges. That was what the police department carried. Our 5-point star was embedded inside of the shield. And so early on, I we had the idea of, you know what? Why don't we ask the troops what they want? Because technically, we fulfilled the statutory requirement. We had our 5-point embedded inside the badge. So, you know, it check the boxes. But what did they feel? What did they want? So I put it out to a vote to all the troops. I said, what do you guys want? We're going to change the badges anyway, because we're going to change the name. But would you like to keep with the traditional, shield? Or do you want to go to 5-point star? And it was a resounding 5-point star. It was nice. And it was like, okay, these guys and gals are ready to embrace this change. And so we've ordered them. I'm making them a commemorative piece. I'll tease out to any of my people who might be listening to the podcast that there'll be a special piece on their badge when they get it. That comes directly from Sheriff Rosie. But yeah, we are still very much learning and the messaging outward so that they understand that they're an extension of not only the office of me as a sheriff. And another sheriff shared this with me. They said, if you like me being your sheriff, then you have to help me stay in this position. And you do that by how you treat your community every day and the service you provide. And so that's pretty much, kind of the message that I try to share with the troops. And one of the things I tell you, I wish I had, it's been such a whirlwind 6 months, John, that I haven't had the time I've wanted to spend time with my troops. And so I literally just this past week told my staff, like, I want it on the calendar. I kept telling myself, I'm just going to pop in, right? I'm going to pop in to the districts during roll calls or whatever. But it's just my calendar doesn't allow for it. So I'm making it on a calendar event. And today, actually, I'm headed out to join my troops on their field force training.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm very much looking forward to that because I think that's one of the things that I've been lacking in. I want to be able to get out there and get that one-on-one time with them, just as I've been able to with the community.
Oh, it's so important, and I think people also need to realize that you and your staff are eating an elephant, every day, basically, because of just the monumental task of what you're going through. But something as simple. So there's this book that was written years ago. It's like a weekend read. It's called Lincoln on Leadership. And one of the things they talked about with President Lincoln was management by walking around. And it's so important for the troops. And I'm delighted to hear you say that. And I'm sure your troops are going to just be overwhelmed to see you, show up at a roll call or a training event like the field force.
Yeah.
That means something, that you took time. Sometimes they don't understand administratively or politically how many events that you have to go to and the time that you sacrifice. And like you said, you said one day off this year, and I bet you were on the phone a lot of that one day off. But they don't realize that it's a 24/7 job. So the fact that you're going to meet with them and talk to them and shake hands and ask them, how's it going? How are we doing? What are pain points? That's huge, Sheriff. And I applaud you for doing that.
Thank you, thank you. But the truth is it's as much for me as it is for them. I remember that for me, being an elected official was the out of my comfort zone. So I'm looking forward to reconnecting with them on that level.
Oh, that's fantastic. So again, just like from an organizational standpoint, have you had time to change anything like how you guys have done promotions or discipline or transfers, or is that a whole nother sleeve of things that are still being developed because you're still getting all your boots on the ground?
Yeah, so we have done some minor changes, I would say, not major. I'd say minor, just in the whole process because we had a grievance process that went all the way down to the mayor. So I immediately had to change that. And then obviously kind of push compressing it downward, which was fine with me because I really did always feel that it should have been handled with the law enforcement people, right? Not necessarily, I wasn't touting myself in the position, but saying like it should be handled at the law enforcement level. Any of that kind of discipline and judging what occurred or what didn't occur. So I had to do some of that. And yes, you're right. Not only are we working on that process, I will also say another big piece that I had to deal with immediately was the hundreds and hundreds of memorandums of understanding that I had with either other municipalities, other county entities, other vendors, just to be able to continue with business as usual, right? Because for us, it's hundreds that we deal with, and so that's been a task in and of itself. But John, remember I mentioned earlier that I was the head of the committee, the internal committee in the transition. So I had been part of the creation of subcommittees and preparations for whomever the sheriff was, with literally a notebook where like, here it is, day one. This is the stuff that is priority that you have to deal with. The one thing I guess I didn't realize is that I'd be the one sitting on the other end of the receiving of that book.
Yeah, how cool is that? I mean, so you were massively involved in the transition team, and you had books prepared, almost like a new president coming in, and here you are,
Yeah.
Mrs. President. It's really it's a great story. It's so exciting. So,
Thanks,
and
John.
then again, so we're the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association, and that's why some of those questions about the internal processes I was curious about. And Florida is a big state, and it's also a small state in law enforcement communities, and the folks that I know that work with you, for you, and around you have just been raving about the new changes, the things that are happening. I think you came in and immediately made some leadership changes and created, part of your team. And I'm sure that's going to evolve as you evolve in that new role. But I've just heard wonderful things from your folks about the fresh blood and the fresh ideas and where you're going. So
Yeah,
it's
thank you. That's
exciting.
good to hear. I'm glad that, like it gets out and they have the conversations because, one of the things that I think is important is as a leader, you have ideas and now I'm in the position where I can affect them, right? But I also need to be the leader that is willing to say, okay, well, that didn't quite work the way I thought it was going to work, right? And adjust and move in a different direction. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that organizationally, that's sometimes the hardest thing for a leader to do is to say, look, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, or it wasn't as good as an idea for the overall good of the organization, and shifting in law enforcement. And I'll tell you that that's one of the historically in our organization, we would do something that everyone knew was not working, but no one would have the courage to just stop it or change it. And that's one of the pitfalls I do not want to get into.
Well, the fact that you're talking about it now, and listen, you're making me feel all warm inside because in my role in the past I had the pleasure of being an undersheriff slash chief deputy, and you had to have the courage to walk something back. You had to have the courage to go, you were right, this didn't work, and let me walk it back.
Yeah.
And that takes just tremendous courage. And you're going to be faced with that probably multiple times just in the next 6 months, because there's unintended consequences. There's things that there's no way. I mean, in a way, you quoted Donald Rumsfeld earlier about you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know that you don't know. So it's exciting to hear you say that, and that your leadership team has the ability to also walk something back should they need to do so. So that's exciting to hear as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're in the business of safety, and on our worst day, someone's life is in danger or at risk, or we're coming up to pick up the pieces afterwards. The way I see it is nothing that we do in this office is compares to that. That's where the real, level your moral compass has to be. The fact that you made some changes that didn't work out, and just your ego or your pride doesn't allow you to say, man, that didn't work out the way I thought it, and we could do better. We have to check ourselves.
Yeah. And also, what an exciting time to be, not just in your role as the new sheriff and the first elected sheriff in decades, but an exciting time to be in law enforcement. Some people would not agree with that statement. Some people would be like, oh man, what a great time to get out. I'm the opposite. I think what a great time to be in, especially in a position where you can affect change, because our world is changing daily. There's the Moore's Law, which talks about technology changes about every 18 months. Something that comes out on the market is no longer relevant in about 18 months, and it's speeding up so quickly. And that is also happening with how we hire people, who we hire, what our background process is these days. And it's exciting. And I think, especially with an agency so large as yours and such, like you said earlier, an international footprint, it's just got to be overwhelming to think about the changes that are coming and that you're going to be a part of that. That's exciting.
It is, and I'm going to say also that on your side of the fence, John, I think it's an exciting time to be in law enforcement. I have my own personal check boxes that I told myself, like, wow, like these are great things that I've been able to accomplish, right? And I'm proud of them. I don't want to diminish them. I'm super proud of being the first woman elected sheriff in Miami-Dade County, of being the first Hispanic woman elected sheriff in the state of Florida. Those are amazing.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. But what I really want to measure myself against is the future. It's the office of the sheriff that I leave for the deputies. I'm so hopeful that the next 5 sheriffs are working for me right now, right? That they're on different levels in the professional career as they're coming up, because I believe so strongly that you have to have those experience to really help a community stay safe. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to the rule, right? I'm not saying there aren't people who had nothing, maybe didn't have a full career in law enforcement and are fantastic sheriffs. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying though is that when you are fully committed, invested to a community in public service, and you bring that to the sheriff, it's a whole other level.
Yeah. And part of what you're doing, and you just said it, is for the people you'll never meet. There's people that your deputies are going to interact with, and you've set the tone and tenor and how you're going to police in your county. And there are many of those people you will never meet, but how you created the organization and how it runs and its tempo is reflected in how your deputies interact with somebody. And then you're also doing it for the future. Those sheriffs that you and I will never meet are going to build on this platform, this foundation that you and your team have created. And I mean, what a legacy! Not only for you personally, and those benchmarks that you set are huge, but from an organizational standpoint as well. I mean, it's just I hope people understand the gravity of what we're watching unfold every day with you and your team. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And like I tell every time I have this conversation, and we've talked a few times during this podcast about, the gravitas of what we're doing here, prayers are very welcome.
Yes. Yeah. And you also so speaking of that, of the prayers, is as a county sheriff, as a duly elected constitutional county sheriff, it's okay to say those things again. It's okay to ask for a prayer. It's okay to reach out to our higher being and to God and to those groups that are in your county. I mean, you also have tons of different religious beliefs in your county, and it's okay to embrace those as well. And sometimes that can't happen when you're appointed.
Yeah.
And that's also another great part of your position. So,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm so grateful, that has allowed me to that platform.
Yeah. In a future podcast, we're gonna do a podcast on the importance of having a chaplain program and how to create one, how to maintain one, and for how it can be successful in a community. So just you touching on that it's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
At some point, I'm going to reach out to you or Under Sheriff Carruthers. I would love to come down and see, the inner makeup of your organization. I've been to all sorts of training in Miami-Dade, and there used to be a hotel they would put us up at on the beach. I think it was the Newport. Yeah. We came down there. I came down there for IA classes, SWAT classes, cargo theft classes, robbery, internal affairs classes. But I'd like to come to your HQ and see how things work behind the curtains there, just from my own edification, because I'm fascinated by organizational change.
John, it would be our pleasure to have you.
Oh, that would be great. And just so our listeners know too, so from where I sit as the Deputy Executive Director of FDSA, we are the voice of more than 25,000 deputies across the state of Florida. What we offer, it used to be 4 table legs and it's grown, but number one is training. We do training all across the state of Florida for free. We do relevant bleeding edge training, whether it's on resiliency, leadership, AI, human trafficking. We try to bring the most and the best training to our members for free. We never charge a dime for any training that we do. Secondly, we have a huge benevolence plan, and that is called the Lend a Hand program. So we are a not-for-profit. So when folks donate to the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association, a lot of that money goes right back to helping Florida deputy sheriffs, whether they faced a family illness, a personal tragedy, their home is destroyed in a hurricane. We've distributed millions of dollars all across the state of Florida to deputies who needed help in their darkest time of need. And then we also have a robust legal team. So if a deputy, we're going to bend metal, we're going to break things as a deputy sheriff, and sometimes we need an attorney. So if a deputy is in need, whether it's a critical incident, line of duty death, in custody death, or something like that, we provide legal services to our members. And then lastly, we provide additional insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, some other, insurance that we give out when somebody's laid it all down on the line, for the service. We've recently started a law enforcement apprenticeship program. And what that does is that allows people in Florida that are often underserved and may not have the economic opportunities to go to the police academy. They can apply to be an intern or an apprentice with us, and we'll send them through. They'll be hired by a sheriff's office. They'll go to a sheriff's office academy, and then we pay for their FTO as well. That's that. And then what I'm proud to say is we've just started a brand new credit union for deputy sheriffs, and more information will come out from there. So those are the 6 things that we do right now, and I hope our listeners understand that. I especially hope our listeners in South Florida will reach out and ask more about what we do. We have a huge footprint across North and Central Florida, and I hope through our relationship, Sheriff, we can have more of a relationship with some of your folks as well. And we're just honored beyond the moon and back that you took time to come on our show and talk about the things that you're doing there. And I would love to have you on maybe this time next year, and we could do what's it look like, a year in review looks like for you and the changes you've made for your deputies in your community.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I would love that.
Okay. Well, it's been a treat. It's been an honor. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputysheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputysheriffs.org.